Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel on finding your path to your best emotional and physical health. My name is Erin, and I'm here to give you some tips and tricks on how to prevent cognitive decline in this series. So if you like what you hear, please click subscribe and the thumbs up button and hit the notifications so you'll get information when new videos come out. Also, please share this information with as many people as possible. I want this information to get out so that anyone who needs it has access to it and kind of helps them with some guidelines of where they maybe need to look at going next in their lives. Also, I have 5 free videos for you to download below that help you with some tips on finding your best emotional and physical health, and kind of give you an idea of some of the things that we might be going through in this channel as far as helping you with your overall health. So let me get into today's topic rather quickly. We've been talking a lot about diet and how it affects cognitive decline and how diet is useful in the prevention of Alzheimer's and vascular dementia and those kinds of things. So we've been talking about kind of the altered food pyramid and what your food stuff should look like as you are rearranging your diet. And now we're going to talk about the very last level of that pyramid, about some of the sweets and treats and things that you should eat very sparingly, but that you can have when you're trying to actually make this dietary change. So I wanted to talk really briefly about those things so that you kind of know what you can incorporate into your diet. A lot of times I get a lot of questions about sweeteners as we're trying to talk about insulin resistance and healing that so that we have less insulin resistance. Sweeteners become a big issue. And there's some conflicting research out there about whether or not the artificial sweeteners create the same glycemic response or the same insulin response as sugar, and that is actually turning out to be more true than we thought previously, that a lot of the artificial stuff will create the same insulin response even though it's not actually sugar that goes on in the body. So there's a few sweeteners that don't do that as much because of their chemical compounds. So those are the ones that I kind of recommend. But you got to use little bits of them, not a ton, of course. Stevia is the one that most people will use. And oftentimes it's combined with a sugar alcohol. So we kind of just need to be aware of that because some of those can be problematic as well. I like to use the one, Sweet Leaf is a good one. That one is probably one of the pure forms, most healthy, that kind of thing. Stevia is an acquired taste, and I'll tell you, it took me a while to get used to it and to not have it bother me. I used to think it was bitter and had this bitter aftertaste. But that went away after I kind of got used to it and used it more and more in my coffee and in my tea and stuff like that, and it got much, much better. The other one that I like to use is monk fruit, and monk fruit is real similar. It's, like stevia, it's made from a natural plant and those kinds of things. So it's often also combined with a sugar alcohol or something like that. And the best brand for that one is probably Pure Monk. They just don't have the same chemical makeup or the same kind of toxins and stuff in their processing as some of the other companies might. Sometimes people ask a lot about honey. Honey is also fairly healthy and can be used when you're looking to kind of create, a lot of times if you have allergies and you're trying to create kind of protection against allergies, people will use natural honey from their local area. And especially from bees that pollinate all the ragweeds, you kind of develop that resistance to the allergies. I haven't always found that to be particularly useful, even though I think it's good in theory. I still seem to get allergies even though I try to have local honey. But a lot of people swear by it, and it's really good for them. So the thing about honey is you have to be careful about the glycemic response and the insulin, because it will not be good for people that are insulin resistant. But if you've kind of healed that, then you might be able to do that and use the honey. I talked a little bit earlier about the sugar alcohols that are often combined with the stevia or the monk fruit, and xylitol is one of them. That's the only sugar alcohol that is not kind of affected by GMOs. So based on the way it's made, so you want to be kind of careful about those kinds of things and what's added. So you look for xylitol, but it can affect the gut microbiome. So you don't want to use a ton of that either, because it can cause problems with all those good bacteria that we kind of talked about. Chocolate. A lot of people ask about chocolate. Is it protective and that kind of stuff? And there's all these different layers of chocolate. And cocoa does have flavonols that are neuroprotective and actually increase circulation in the brain. But they can also have processing issues and be subjective to pollution and stuff like that when the beans themselves are harvested and processed. So you just want to be really careful and try to get ones that are organic and say they're pollutant free and things like that. So that can be a little bit hard when you're trying to do shopping for those kinds of products. I always tell people, try to get the highest percent of cocoa that you can tolerate without it being too bitter, because the higher the cocoa, like 85% or 90% or whatever, is going to be better for you and have less sugar and less fat than the lower percentage ones. So that's a little tip on how to choose that. The other one is cacao nibs, which are actually the roasted cocoa beans and then kind of crushed up. So they're kind of crunchy, and they're kind of almost a little bit like pieces of coffee bean, which some people will also eat as well, but cocoa beans. And they actually create some prebiotic fiber, which is good and healthy for the gut. But again, you have to kind of make sure you're getting stuff from a good source. Cocoa powder and cacao powder both can be flavors that you'll find, like, in like a coffee shop or a tea shop. Then people will add them to drinks and stuff. They a lot of times have toxins in their processing, so you want to try to avoid those if at all possible. Dairy is always an interesting one. Dairy, we really suggest limiting because it can be often inflammatory. There's actually a lot of people that are lactose intolerant. And there was kind of some interesting things that I was reading about some of the genetic changes in milk over the years. And they actually have this kind of molecular mimicry where some of the molecules in specific types of milk will look like gluten and kind of react in the gut like gluten and kind of trigger those gluten sensitivity receptors in the gut. So you want to kind of know that and be aware of that, which is probably some of the lactose intolerance issues. What I found interesting in this research is that they call these two different types, A2 and A1 types of milk, and A2 is the original genetic makeup, and then there was one change in a single amino acid that now creates a histamine response. So it was changed from whatever that was prior to a histidine, and it will create that kind of allergic reaction in that A1, which is now recognized by the immune system as an invader. So that's why it has the inflammatory process. And we don't know why this spontaneous change happened. It just does. And those A1 milk-producing cows actually tended to produce more milk, so people just naturally selected for them because that's just the economy of it. And then the A2 kind of went by the wayside. Supposedly it's easier to find A2 milk now. I don't drink a lot of milk, so I haven't looked for it lately. But they say that they can get it in some of the health food stores. Now, another way to get this A2 milk, or this milk that does not have these challenges, is to stick with things like goat and sheep and yak, camel, not sure where you find those, but buffalo, those kinds of things. I know goat milk's pretty easy to find, and it does not have that same problem. Having lived with someone with lactose intolerance, they can definitely take in the goat milk, especially in cheese and stuff as well, a lot easier than they can than regular cow's milk. The other thing we need to kind of consider, like yogurts, and even though we've talked about prebiotic and probiotic sources, because they're dairy, you have to kind of be careful with yogurts and kefir. And kefir can also have some dairy in there, but it has a little bit better bacteria than the yogurts. And then, like we've talked about in the probiotic series, is that yogurts, if they have not added back the live cultures, can have some problems as well. And they're just not as beneficial as we thought previously, just because of the processing process. So The very last thing I want to touch on is alcohol. There is some conflicting evidence regarding that because there's some good compounds in alcohol, especially in the red wine, is resveratrol, but there's a lot of kind of suggestion that maybe even APO4E allele carriers have poor utilization of alcohol, and there's something that goes on with their genetic structure so they can't change that or use that as it enters the body, and then that causes some issues for them. It also can interfere with ketosis, so if you're taking it too late at night or at other times of the day when you're trying to fast, it doesn't really work. And it can also block REM sleep, and that will prevent memories from forming and people from kind of actually completely relaxing and getting that solid, deep sleep that they need. The best bet if you're going to have it on occasion is dry red wine, because it's going to have less of the issues, less sugar, less all of that. But it can be processed with nitrates on occasion, which tends to give people headaches. So you kind of want to be aware of that. And no more than 3 to 5 ounces at a time. So even though you like your wine, everything in moderation, right? So you hear that a lot, and that's good advice to heed. So that's all I have for today. We're going to start into some new stuff, new research on cognitive decline. Probably tomorrow. I think tomorrow we're going to get into it. So if you stick with me, I'll get you some more information. If you need some personal coaching on making these dietary changes, please connect with me on the website, and we'll get you hooked up so that we can help support you in those changes. Thanks, and have a great day.